In starting out tonight, I found a story, and it doesn't really have anything to do with what I want to preach about, but I don't care. I just really wanted to share this story with you. There was a woman who continually stood up, waving her arms during the celebration of the Mass, as if in ecstasy. She rebuffed every attempt by the ushers to quiet her down and became agitated if they came too close to her. This went on week after week. Finally, the pastor approached her after Mass, whispered something in her ear, and she immediately snapped her hands to her side. From that day on, she never again stood up during the Mass waving her arms. A couple of weeks later, one of the ushers congratulated the pastor for quieting her down and asked him what it was that he had said to her. The pastor said with a twinkle, "Why, I told her that standing up and waving your arms is the penance I give for adultery." The gospel, Jesus said, "Take care to guard against all greed." Though one's life may be rich, one's life does not consist of possessions. And so I knew I wanted to try and find, as I so often do, some stories. So I went to a number of my books of stories and went to the indexes looking up greed. Found a little bit, and then I looked up, well, I'll try something else. Materialism, possessions, wasn't that much more that I could really find. But the thing that struck me later on was I was so quick to look at the sins, greed, materialism, love of possessions, that I forgot to even look for the other side. And so I went back, and right above greed, I looked for stories about generosity. And there was a bunch of them. And you're going to get every one of them tonight. No, that's not true. Several years ago, my family, we had a second cousin related on my mom's side through, I've never been very good at keeping track of all of those, but she was a lovely older lady, just very charming. She had worked for the airlines for years and then worked at a help desk after that. She didn't really have any family around. And so we, when we would have family gatherings, we would invite her, or when we were regularly, my brothers and sisters who were getting together for lunch, we'd invite her to come along. She always seemed to enjoy it, but she never invited us over to her place. She had a horse that she just absolutely loved, and that just kind of added to her charm. And she had a couple of cats, but that didn't take away from her charm too much, I thought. But she just was kind of private in that regard. So a couple years ago, she passed away. And one of my older sisters, out of her own goodness or charity or sense of duty, whatever, took it upon herself that she would kind of step in to bring our cousin's affairs to a conclusion? Well, my sister had no idea what she was taking on because our cousin was such a hoarder. She had so much junk, stuff, treasures, whatever, in her house that my sister had to go in through one of the windows. She couldn't even get in through one of the doors without having to climb over a pile of whatever. And it was just old newspapers and magazines and I don't know what all it was, but the house was filled with all of this. And my sister took it upon herself to kind of be sorting all of this stuff out because she hoped that somewhere they might find our cousin's will. Never did, but it was amazing because my sister, after having taken this on, she spoke with such disgust about our second cousin. She had no idea that she was such a hoarder, that she just was so focused on things to the point of where it made her a completely different person than what we thought. And I would listen to my sister talk about how much she just really didn't like the fact that our cousin was this way. And then I went and looked around my sister's house. And it wasn't that bad, but it's not good. She has so much stuff in her garage that she hasn't needed for 15 or 20 years or more, but she can't seem to let go of it. And I just look at my sister and say, well, come on. You can't really be that attached to all of this stuff. Feeling all smug that, well, at least I'm not that materialistic, and yet probably my younger brother, who really tries to simplify his life, would look at my stuff and say, what are you doing with all this junk? Why is it that we seem to be so attached to our things, to our material objects? I don't know how many of you noticed it. If you were driving up Meridian Road, less than a mile away, they're putting the finishing touches on a whole new set of storage units. How many of those do we see? I'm not going to ask how many of you have one or more. We've even got TV shows now where you can buy what's in a storage unit and take your chances of blah, 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 all of that stuff. Why are we becoming so focused on stuff, on possessions, on what we have to have? Why is it that we can't let go? The Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea are formed by the same water supply. It flows down clear and cool from Mount Hermon. The Sea of Galilee makes beauty of its water, for the sea has an outlet. It gets to give. It gathers in its riches that it may pour them out again to fertilize the Jordan plain. The Sea of Galilee teems with fish and life. The Dead Sea, on the other hand, with the same sort of refreshing water, is desolate, for it has no outlet. It only takes in, and it's dead. Nothing can grow. Nothing can survive in it. Interestingly, unselfish and selfish people act in much the same way. Unselfish people get to give and luxuriate in their generosity, while selfish people only get to keep and stagnate into desolation. People who are generous are confident and hopeful. People who are selfish are fearful. Their lives are filled with worry. And in the gospel, Jesus speaks of those who are rich in the things of God. People who are generous, people who are willing to not hold on in fear. They are rich in the things of God. I'm not sure we as a society are that way. I'm not sure that we don't, in so many ways, value things more than people. When the weather turns bad in the winter, how many of us worry about leaving our cars out in the weather? We'll bring them into the garage where they'll be safe. And yet, do we really stop to remember that we have so many people in this country that are being forced to stay out in the same horrible weather? But they don't matter as much as our cars. We've gotten so bad, I think, that there's something that happens at least once a year, and it gives me the willies that we as a people are projecting this image to the world with so many in our country, with so many throughout the world who are going hungry, who are even dealing with starvation. Once a year on the 4th of July, we have on TV a hot dog eating contest. We show to the world how little we care about food, that we will just waste it. We will just make a sport of it. That is absolutely obscene on our part. And if we wonder why so many people in the world think poorly of America. We give them reason to. We worry about not having enough. We worry about, what if I don't have this and I need it? What do we need? Are we worried that God will not care for us? He always has. Maybe something for us to remember. Once there was a supermarket sweepstakes in which the 5 finalists were each given a 15-minute shopping spree. Picture that. Picture how you would handle that if you were given the opportunity. Whoever accumulated the highest total on the register receipt would be declared the winner. The finalists sped through the aisles, scooped up expensive items, crashed carts into one another, and bounced off store fixtures. It was a hectic, mad dash race among the contestants. But from around an aisle, there appeared a young man who just sauntered along, casually selected items off the shelf, and placed them in his cart. Amid the pushing and shoving, one of the finalists gaped at him as he slowly moved along. She shouted to him, "Why are you poking along and not in a hurry like everyone else?" "Me?" he replied. "Why, my father owns the store." Why are we not in a hurry like everyone else? When our Father owns the store, we will not be forgotten. What are we so worried about? Why can't we let go and be more generous?